Hello. It's nice to see you again. In the last video, I shared my experiences about my child's elementary school years. It's quite a coincidence, but here in Vancouver, my child's 6th grade homeroom teacher also happens to live. She also works with us at our organization. After filming the last video, it suddenly occurred to me that it might be nice to share our homeroom teacher's experiences and wisdom with you. The reason is that she worked for a long time as a regular teacher at an elementary school where children with developmental disabilities and typically developing children are educated together. So I thought she might have some helpful stories for parents of elementary school students raising children with developmental disabilities. She gladly accepted my invitation when I asked her. Today we have invited her here. Welcome, teacher.
Hello.
Yes, it's nice to meet you.
First, I would appreciate it if you could briefly introduce yourself. Yes, I try to live joyfully. My name is Jungjin Gap.
Teacher Gap, you worked at the elementary school my child attended. Since when and what kind of students with developmental disabilities have you taught in an inclusive education environment?
It's been a really long time. The first time I had a student with a disability was in 1997 when I was a first grade homeroom teacher. That year, I met a student with autism spectrum disorder in my class for the first time. Since then, every year I was a homeroom teacher. There were 1 or 2 students with disabilities in my class, depending on the degree of their disability. I've also had students with Down syndrome, but most of them were on the autism spectrum.
Yes, there must be both advantages and disadvantages of inclusive education environments for general students. What is your opinion on this?
Yes, I think there are actually a lot of benefits for general students. The most commonly mentioned one is the improvement of awareness and understanding of people with disabilities. Especially in kindergarten and elementary school, children naturally interact with friends who have disabilities. So even when they become adults, they don't find disabilities strange or react with surprise. And if I were to mention a downside, not so much a bad point, but rather a challenge or inconvenience, it would be that students with disabilities often display unexpected behaviors. At those times, it can be a bit confusing, and since it's a school environment, there are naturally a lot of things to help with and pay attention to. But actually, rather than being a downside, that can also be seen as an advantage. By helping out, the students really grow a lot. But actually, that's just from the teacher's perspective. So I directly asked my former students who experienced inclusive education and are now adults.
I see. What did they say?
So I got a response.
Oh, really? Yes.
Since I shouldn't just talk about my own thoughts, this is a student I taught in 4th grade back in 2000. He is now 44 years old. Teacher, through inclusive education, I was able to understand the difficulties faced by people with disabilities, and I think I also learned ways to help them, even if just in small ways. After entering society, I found that most people feel a lot of pressure around people with disabilities because they don't know much about them. But I didn't feel that way. And if I had to say what was best, I think the greatest thing was that I grew up without prejudice or misconceptions about friends with disabilities. That's what he told me. Another friend left a strong impression on me. She is currently a teacher at a daycare center, and it's an inclusive daycare. 1, 2, 3. She shared some really memorable stories with me. She was my student when I taught first grade in 1997. While working at the inclusive daycare, what I realized most was that, compared to other teachers, my perception of people with disabilities was different. Many teachers who haven't experienced inclusive education often say that children with disabilities require more attention and care. So non-disabled children end up receiving less care because of them, and they call this reverse discrimination. She was quite surprised to realize that people thought this way. Watching the children in the inclusive class learn to understand disabilities and become friends with one another made me proud, and I saw that through this process, the children didn't just grow a little, they experienced much greater growth. Even children, as young as 4 or 5, who had experienced inclusive education, were able to express their thoughts about people with disabilities through their words and actions. For example, there are friends who are physically challenged and can be helped by holding their hands without hesitation when moving, or friends who are sensitive to loud noises, especially friends with autism. They also showed care for friends who are sensitive to loud sounds. Sometimes they even displayed more maturity than teachers who had not experienced inclusive education. That's why I believe that inclusive education offers greater benefits, whether for students with disabilities or without. And to mention one last student, there was a 6th grader in 2007 who also talked about something they found disappointing.
Really?
When they brought it up, I realized that it was actually the teachers' fault. The disappointing part was that we didn't get to learn about disabilities in a systematic way. It was always, you have to help this friend because they're weaker than you, so you should help them. That's what makes you a good child. That's what the adults would say. And that's why we did it. But what is a disability? It would have been better if we had been taught more systematically about disabilities, such as why there are differences in behavior between students in our support room and those in other classes, and why we should help those who are weaker. And what those friends said was that the biggest advantage was that it became a foundation for understanding people who are slower than me. Hearing them say that, I was quite touched in my own way.
It's truly valuable to hear your opinions and experiences. But the fact that you actually asked your former students for their thoughts and shared them with us is really meaningful. This is actually the first time I'm hearing these stories through our children. I'm also having a lot of different thoughts, and I feel very moved. Thank you. Thank you for doing this for me.
Thank you. I'm grateful.
Yes. Then, for the next question, what do you think are the benefits and perhaps some of the shortcomings of inclusive education environments for students with developmental disabilities?
When I look at this question, in some ways, I think that the things that are good for typically developing students are also beneficial for students with disabilities. To be honest, I haven't experienced middle or high school, so I'm not very familiar with inclusive education at those levels. But as for kindergarten and elementary school, I believe there are far more advantages than disadvantages. First, to briefly mention the downsides, in an inclusive setting, especially in the elementary school classrooms I've experienced, even for students without disabilities, it's actually not easy to sit still for an entire class period. But then, disabled friends have no choice. And then another issue for our students is whether or not there is a support person when students with and without disabilities are together. This makes a huge difference. When there is one-on-one support, it becomes much easier to achieve inclusion, both physically and academically. However, if there is no support person, there are times when students with disabilities may be left unattended or face difficulties.
Actually, I think my wife mentioned that same point when we shared our kindergarten experiences last time. She said that if only our child is there, it could be difficult. So it would be better to have a support teacher assigned. You're sharing the same opinion.
I have the same opinion. But these days, especially if there's no support teacher, it's really tough because aside from children with disabilities, there are also many general students who need attention, like those with ADHD or borderline intelligence. It's extremely difficult for the homeroom teacher alone. That's why a support teacher
Need.
There are several advantages. As I mentioned earlier, when these students are together, after all, the world is a place where we live together. In such cases, many of our general students actually become role models. In reality, in those situations, it's important to show specifically how to help, not just tell them to endure it no matter what, because that doesn't work either. So, knowing how to help in those situations is really beneficial for everyone involved.
So this might be a similar question, but currently there are many parents raising children with developmental disabilities who are either about to enter elementary school or are already attending. For us, this is something we experienced quite a while ago. But based on your experience, is there anything you would like to share with parents who are now raising young children?
I think this is a very important point. Now, when I was in elementary school, I saw a lot of children with disabilities, and now I work with adults here. Many parents, especially those whose children are on the autism spectrum, are extremely busy taking their kids to all sorts of programs if they hear there's a good one. As soon as one ends, they rush off to the next. I'm not saying that parents and children shouldn't do those things. Rather than getting exhausted, I believe it's most important, especially during kindergarten and elementary school years, to help children learn basic life skills through everyday experiences. As you know, basic life skills are the things every person must do from the moment they wake up in the morning until they go to bed at night. For example, getting up, putting on and taking off clothes, changing clothes, using the bathroom, brushing teeth, if you help your child with these tasks. According to their individual characteristics and the degree of their disability, your child will be able to enjoy school life and other programs much more. And the teachers and others involved will also be able to support them much more effectively. I've often seen that when parents do everything for their child in a rush to get to a program, the child gradually loses the ability to perform basic life skills on their own. This even happens during the elementary school years. In fact, it's really just a matter of degree. It's probably the same for children without disabilities as well.
That's right.
If you look at Korea these days, kids don't even learn basic life skills. The parents do everything for them, and then it's just a constant cycle of after-school academies. The degree may differ, but isn't the underlying principle the same?
Yes. Now that we've come a long way and are looking back on the past, we feel some regret, but in any case, as we share our past experiences, we're really saying what we hope parents today will do. So we think it would be best if parents respond appropriately according to their own situations. Earlier you mentioned that it would be good to help according to the child's characteristics. Specifically, how should we help?
When I was learning about and practicing inclusive education, there was a method I learned that I still remember and put into practice today. It's called the 3-step method for helping friends with disabilities. By remembering and applying these 3 steps, I found that it was really effective. To put it simply, the first step is to explain with words. If that doesn't work, the second step is to demonstrate. And if demonstrating still doesn't work, then the third step is to do it together. It's like a phrase to help you remember, explain, demonstrate, and do it together. For example, when you need to zip up or button, close, right? If you just demonstrate, you end up doing everything for them. Exactly, that's right. You end up saying, well, hurry, 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 put it on and do it all yourself. But that's not it, it's just going fast. Do you want to try buttoning it yourself? Then, now give it a try. But they can't button it very well.
They can't do it properly, right?
Then look, watch this. I'll show you how to do it. So let's put this here like this. You put it in here. That's right. You put it in. Try it once. Done.
Put it in, right?
That's right, you put it in. If it doesn't work this way, you help them together. Try pressing with your fingers like this. Press it. That's it.
You really need a lot of patience to do this. It's not something that works in one go, and it could even take several years. So parents really need to have a lot of patience.
Next, these are just simple examples. But depending on the degree of the child's disability, some children can do it right away in one go.
Yes, yes, yes.
For some children it takes a long time, so move on to steps 1, 2, and 3.
It's the same for my child, but honestly, even now, there's still a bit of a lack, and it does take a long time. But I think just being patient is really important. Even if it's a bit lacking, you just have to let it go. If you do everything perfectly for them, I think it actually slows down our children's development.
That's why, in that regard, I've actually seen some positive effects even now when working with adult friends. For example, if this goes well, basic life skills like setting the table for a meal and then cleaning up afterward, those are also basic life skills in a way. So with the friends I meet now, I first explain verbally that empty dishes should go in the sink. If they can't do it well, I demonstrate it for them, but now we're at a stage where they don't need to be told to put the empty dishes in the sink. Step 0 is the do-it-yourself step. They do it at stage 0. After finishing their meal, they just take the dishes to the sink. So there are cases like this as well. Of course, there are various cases.
You just mentioned something similar, but currently, you are supporting adults with developmental disabilities. What do you consider the most important thing when supporting adults with developmental disabilities?
Actually, this is something I learned after coming here. What I learned is that, first of all, the big picture is that these adults are not children anymore. The main principle is, as long as they're not causing significant harm to others, let's allow them to do what they want. That's the big picture. Within that, what I always keep in mind is first to observe carefully, observation. Next, to repeat good things that suit each individual. From this perspective, just providing care would be fine. But I think it would be even better if care and education could go hand in hand. So what I always remember is that if you observe closely, you'll notice things that would be good to do for them. Then I make sure to remember to provide repeated guidance or education on those things.
What differences are there between your experiences in elementary school and supporting adults with developmental disabilities now?
Rather than differences, I think the principles are the same. If you observe closely, then you come up with good ideas that fit their needs.
If you look and focus, you get ideas. Yes, yes.
But even if you notice something, you can't make it happen all at once.
That's right.
If you keep repeating it steadily every day, I feel a sense of fulfillment. And also, sometimes when they reach a new level, it makes me really happy.
Teachers, since we're not the parents, I think our capacity for patience is actually greater. But for parents, honestly, they tend to have less patience with their own children. So if parents want to apply what you just mentioned, they'll need to make an effort. So I think one way is for parents to remind themselves to wait from the perspective of a teacher rather than as a parent, since our children are like this.
That's right.
All right, I think we've covered most of the questions now. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yes. Lastly, I want to thank you so much for giving me your valuable time today. And what I'm feeling right now is that when I meet adults here who were once elementary school kids, it really strikes me to see how children from elementary school days grow up and become like this. When I see that, I feel a lot of different emotions all at once. So in a way, taking good care of and educating our friends with disabilities is something that brings joy to their families as well. And if they receive a good education and proper inclusive education during childhood, I truly believe that when they become adults, they can be much happier in many different ways. So in that sense, I also feel a sense of fulfillment, and since we are all in this together, anyway, as I reflected on these various thoughts while answering this question, it was actually very helpful for me as well.
Oh, thank you. We made this request rather suddenly, but thank you so much for agreeing to come so willingly, and I really appreciate you sharing such valuable insights and experiences with us today.
I also learned so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching until the end, and we'll see you next time with another topic. Thank you.
Thank you.